Stop. Just stop for a moment. You think you are the one watching this video. You think you are the one sitting there, looking at the screen, hearing these words, noticing your thoughts, noticing your feelings, noticing the world around you. But here's the strange part. If you can notice your thoughts, then who is noticing them? If you can watch your emotions rise and fall, then who is watching the emotions? And if you can notice yourself saying, "I am here," then who is aware of the one saying it? Stay with me for a moment, because this question is much deeper than it sounds. You have probably spent your entire life believing that you are the person behind your eyes. The person thinking, the person deciding, the person remembering yesterday and planning tomorrow. You say, "I think." You say, "I feel." You say, "I see." You say, "I am." But what if the deepest part of you is not the thinker? What if it is not the feeling? What if it is not even the person you have been calling me? Take a slow breath. And for just a few seconds, don't try to change anything. Don't force yourself to relax. Don't try to become spiritual. Just notice. Notice the sound around you. Notice your breathing. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Maybe one thought just appeared without you asking for it. Maybe another thought disappeared without you telling it to leave. You didn't schedule the next thought. You didn't build it. It simply appeared, and you noticed it. That tiny moment contains a question most people never stop long enough to ask. If the thought appears inside your awareness, then maybe you are not the thought. And if you are not the thought, who are you? This is where the I am state begins. Not with another belief. Not with another affirmation. Not with pretending to be someone you are not. It begins with noticing what remains when everything you normally use to describe yourself becomes quiet. Your name can change. Your clothes can change. Your location can change. Your relationships can change. Your goals can change. Even your personality can change over time. Yet somehow, through all those changes, there is still a simple sense of, I am. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to prove it. You simply know that you exist. And that is where something unusual begins to happen. Because the moment you stop chasing every thought and start noticing the one who is aware, you may feel a strange distance from the noise inside your mind. The thought is there, but you are watching it. The fear is there, but you are aware of it. The memory is there, but you can see it passing through. And suddenly, something that once felt like your entire identity begins to look more like a passing signal. But here's the part one want you to remember. What if awareness itself is not something you created? What if you have been looking through it your entire life without ever turning around to notice it? Imagine standing inside a dark room with a small window. For years, you stare through the window and believe the world outside is everything. You watch people moving. You watch the sky changing. You watch storms arriving. You watch sunlight returning. Then one day, you turn away from the window. And for the first time, you notice the room you were standing inside. That is the shift. You are not being asked to escape your life. You are being asked to notice the awareness in which your entire experience is appearing. And once you notice it, another question appears. If you are the observer, then why does it sometimes feel like something is still watching you? Think about it. You can observe your body. You can observe your thoughts. You can observe your emotions. You can even observe yourself trying to observe. So what happens when the observer becomes aware of itself? This is where the ordinary idea of I starts to crack. Not because something is wrong with you, but because you may have been identifying. The surface layer says, I am this person. The deeper layer asks, who is aware of this person? And deeper still, who is aware that I am asking the question? Don't rush past that. Just sit with it. Because sometimes the biggest breakthrough does not arrive as an answer. Sometimes it arrives as silence. And in that silence, you may notice something that has been present the entire time. Something that doesn't need to speak. Something that doesn't need to prove itself. Something that simply remains. I am. You were searching for yourself in your thoughts, while the one aware of those thoughts was already here. You are not the voice you hear inside your mind. You are the awareness that hears it. And now, we are about to go one step deeper. Because if the observer is not the thought, and the thought is not the observer, then what exactly has been watching you all this time? That's where this gets truly strange. Maybe you felt it just now. That small pause after the question. That moment when your mind tried to find an answer. But instead of an answer, there was simply awareness. You were still there. The room was still there. The sound around you was still there. Your breathing was still happening. But something had changed. You were no longer completely lost inside the experience. And this is where most people make a mistake. They immediately try to name what they discovered. They call it consciousness. They call it the soul. They call it the universe. They call it higher awareness. They call it the quantum field. But the moment you give it a name, the mind feels safe again. It has something to hold, something to explain, something to put inside a box. But what if the thing you are trying to understand cannot be placed inside a box? What if the deepest I am state is not an object you can find? What if it is the space in which everything you experience appears? Think about a radio. The radio receives hundreds of signals, but you only hear the one it is tuned to. Your mind works in a similar way. Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through you. Fear, memories, plans, regrets, dreams, old conversations, imagined futures. And because you hear them inside your own mind, you automatically assume they are you. But are they? A thought can say, you are not good enough. Another thought can say, you can do anything. One thought can make you afraid. Another can make you excited. They can contradict each other within seconds. Yet you remain aware of both. That means something inside you is not moving with every thought. It is noticing. It is witnessing. It is present before the thought arrives, and still present after the thought disappears. Now take this even deeper. Close your eyes for a few seconds if you can. Notice the darkness behind your eyelids. Now notice your breathing. Don't control it. Just watch it. Your body knows how to breathe without you giving it instructions. Your heart continues beating. Your body continues regulating itself. Thoughts continue appearing. And somehow, you are aware of all of it. But who is the you watching? This is the threshold, because the mind will immediately try to answer. It may say, I am the brain. Then ask yourself, who is aware of the brain? It may say, I am my personality. Then ask, who notices when your personality changes? It may say, I am my memories. But memories come and go. So who remembers that the memories are there? You begin to see the pattern. Every answer becomes another thing that can be observed. And whatever can be observed cannot be the final observer. This does not mean you are nothing. It means you may be far more difficult to define than you were taught. You are not simply a name. You are not simply a history. You are not simply the mistakes you made. You are not the rejection you experienced. You are not the relationship that ended. You are not the version of yourself that existed 5 years ago. Those are experiences. And you are the one aware of the experiences. This is why something strange happens when people become deeply quiet. The usual story of themselves begins to lose its power. The old identity says, I need to become someone. But awareness says, I already am. The old identity says, I need to prove my worth. Awareness says, I exist before the proof. The old identity says, I need to control everything. Awareness simply watches. And this is where the I am state becomes powerful. It is not about becoming more impressive. It is about becoming less dependent on the constant noise telling you who you are. You don't have to fight every thought. You don't have to destroy your ego. You don't have to run away from your life. You simply begin to notice. I am aware. Again, I am aware. And again, I am. Something about those two words is different from saying, I am successful. I am beautiful. I am powerful. I am rich. Those statements describe a condition. But I am comes before the description. It does not need an adjective. It does not need a title. It does not need permission. It simply points toward existence itself. And here's the twist. The moment you stop trying to add something to I am, you may realize how much of your life has been spent trying to become worthy of being here. You chased approval. You chased success. You chased relationships. You chased recognition. You chased a future version of yourself. Always thinking, once I become that person, then I will finally feel complete. But what if completeness was never waiting in the future? What if you were looking for yourself in a destination, when the one doing the searching was already present? Let that question sit with you. Because now we reach something even more mysterious. If awareness is always here, why does it sometimes disappear from your attention? Why do you become completely lost in a thought? Why can one memory pull you into the past? Why can one fear make an imaginary future feel completely real? And why? When you suddenly wake up from that mental storm, do you say, I wasn't even aware of what I was doing? Who noticed that you had been lost? Something was still there. Even when you forgot yourself, something did not forget you. And that is the mystery we are about to enter next. Because perhaps the observer was never missing. Perhaps you were simply looking in the wrong direction. You don't have to become the I am. You have to notice that you were never outside it. And once you understand that, the entire way you look at your thoughts, your past, and your future begins to change. You were never outside the awareness. You were only distracted from it. Think about how quickly your attention can move. 1 second, you are watching these words. Then a memory appears. Suddenly, you are somewhere else. You remember a conversation from years ago. You hear someone's voice in your mind. You feel the emotion connected to it. For a few moments, that memory becomes more real than the room around you. Then something happens. You notice it. You realize, I was thinking. And the moment you notice the thought, you are no longer completely trapped inside it. That tiny shift is more important than it looks. Because awareness does not need to fight the thought. It does not need to argue with it. It simply sees it. And when you see something clearly, it begins to lose its ability to control you. This is why your inner world can change without you changing your entire outer life. The same room can surround you. The same responsibilities can exist. The same problems may still be waiting. But your relationship with them can become completely different. Before, a thought appeared and you followed it. Now, a thought appears and you watch it. Before, fear appeared and you became the fear. Now, fear appears and you notice, fear is here. Before, sadness appeared and you said, I am sad. Now, you can notice, sadness is moving through me. That small difference creates space. And inside that space, something becomes visible. You, not the personality you built, not the identity you created to survive, not the version of yourself that learned what people wanted you to be. Something quieter. Something that was there before the explanations. Something that does not need to announce itself. I am. But don't turn this into another idea you have to believe. That's the trap. The mind loves collecting spiritual ideas. It can hear the words, I am, and immediately create another identity. I am awakened. I am more conscious than other people. I understand reality. And just like that, the ego has entered through the back door. You were trying to escape identification and created a new identity instead. So don't claim that you are special. Don't claim that you are above anyone. Simply observe. That is enough. Because the deeper you observe, the more you begin to notice something unusual about your attention. You can watch your body. You can watch your thoughts. You can watch your emotions. You can watch your reactions. You can even watch the part of you that wants to become enlightened. But can you watch awareness itself? Try. Right now. Don't search for an image. Don't search for a voice. Don't search for a glowing light. Just notice that you are aware. That's it. You are aware of these words. You are aware of your body. You are aware of the space around you. You are aware that you are aware. And then, don't do anything. For 1 second. Rest there. That tiny pause is the doorway. Not because something magical has to appear, but because you have stopped adding unnecessary noise. And when the noise becomes quiet enough, you may notice something you normally miss. Awareness has no obvious age. Your body has an age. Your memories have dates. Your identity has a history. But the simple fact that you are aware does not arrive with a birthday. You don't remember the first moment of awareness in the same way you remember your first day at school. You simply find yourself here. Now. Always now. Yesterday appears as a memory. Tomorrow appears as an imagination. But your actual experience is always happening here. And this is where the mind becomes uncomfortable. Because the mind wants to live in time. It wants to replay what happened. It wants to predict what will happen. It wants to constantly ask, what next? But awareness does not have to chase the next moment. It is already here when the next moment arrives. This is why the present can feel strangely powerful when you actually enter it. Not the idea of the present. The real present. The sound you can hear right now. The feeling of your breathing. The weight of your body. The space around you. The simple fact. I am here. And suddenly, You may understand why so many people feel exhausted without knowing exactly why. They are constantly living in mental time, replaying the past, rehearsing the future, judging the present. But awareness itself is not exhausted. It is simply watching. And once you begin returning to that awareness, something else starts to happen. You stop reacting so quickly. A message arrives. You pause. Someone says something hurtful. You pause. A fear appears. You pause. A powerful desire pulls you toward an old habit. You pause. That pause may only last 2 seconds. But inside those 2 seconds, your old pattern doesn't automatically get to choose your next move. And that changes everything. Because your life is not only shaped by the huge decisions you make, it is shaped by thousands of tiny moments when you either react automatically or become aware. That is the real threshold. Not some distant mystical location. Not a secret room. Not a mysterious place hidden somewhere beyond the stars. The threshold is the moment between stimulus and reaction. The moment when something happens, and you notice yourself before you respond. That is where your freedom begins. But here's what no one tells you. The moment you become more aware, your old patterns may become more visible. And that can feel uncomfortable. You may suddenly notice how often you seek approval, how quickly you become defensive, how often you compare yourself, how much energy you spend worrying about things you cannot control. At first, this can feel like you're getting worse. You're not. You are seeing what was already there. The light didn't create the dust. It simply revealed it. And this is where your journey becomes deeper. Because the I am state is not about escaping your human experience. It is about becoming conscious enough to see it clearly. You don't have to destroy your past. You don't have to hate your old self. You don't have to pretend you never made mistakes. You simply stop allowing yesterday to define the awareness that exists today. Your past is a story. Your thoughts are signals. Your emotions are movements. Your identity is a changing pattern. But beneath all of them, there is the simple recognition. I am. And now comes the question that changes the entire journey. If you are the one observing your thoughts, and you are becoming aware of the awareness itself, then why does it sometimes feel like there is another presence behind the observer? Something you cannot see, but somehow cannot ignore. Something that seems to notice you, even when you stop trying to notice anything. And that question is where we are going next. The moment you stop reacting to every thought, you discover the space where your real freedom begins. Now listen carefully, because this is where the question becomes much stranger. You have already seen that thoughts can be observed. Emotions can be observed. Memories can be observed. Even your sense of identity can be observed. But then something happens when you become very quiet. You begin to notice the observer itself. And for a brief moment, there may be no story, no label, no explanation, just a simple sense of being here. I am. But then the mind returns. It asks, who is aware of this? And suddenly, you are looking for an answer again. You search your thoughts. You search your memories. You search your body. You search for some hidden voice that will finally explain everything. But every answer you find can still be observed. So you keep going deeper and deeper until you reach a strange point where searching itself becomes impossible. Because what you are searching for is not another object. It is the awareness doing the searching. Imagine trying to look directly at your own eyes without using a mirror. You can look outward forever, but you cannot see the eyes doing the looking. In the same way, awareness can observe almost everything appearing within experience. But when awareness turns toward itself, there may be nothing solid to grab, and that can feel unsettling, because your mind wants something definite. A face, a name, a voice, a shape, something it can say. That's it. But the deeper state does not give you that comfort. It gives you presence, and presence does not need a shape. This is why silence can feel so powerful. When the noise becomes quiet, you may discover that you don't need to constantly explain yourself to yourself. For a few seconds, you are simply here. No past to defend. No future to control. No identity to perform. Just, I am. And then something unexpected happens. You realize that the observer doesn't need your permission to exist. You don't wake up in the morning and create awareness from nothing. You wake up, and awareness is already there. Before you think about your responsibilities, you are aware. Before you remember your problems, you are aware. Before you decide what kind of day you're going to have, you are already aware. So perhaps the deepest part of your experience isn't something you build. Perhaps it is something you notice. And here's the twist. You may have spent years trying to improve the person you think you are, while ignoring the awareness that has watched every version of that person appear and disappear. Think about the child you once were. That child had different dreams, different fears, different beliefs, different interests. Then you became another version of yourself. Then another. Your appearance changed. Your voice changed. Your friendships changed. Your goals changed. But somehow, you still recognize the feeling of being me. How? What is the thread connecting all those versions? The mind will give you many answers. Memory, personality, brain activity, experience. And these may describe important parts of your human life. But there is still a deeper question. Who is aware of all those changing layers? Don't force an answer. Let the question remain open. Because an open question can take you further than a quick answer. And this is where the I am state becomes less like a belief and more like an experience. You don't have to convince yourself that you exist. You know. You don't need evidence that you are experiencing this moment. You are experiencing it. That certainty is incredibly simple. And because it is so simple, the mind often overlooks it. The mind wants fireworks. It wants visions. It wants signs. It wants something extraordinary. But awareness may reveal itself through something completely ordinary. A breath. A pause. A quiet room. A moment when you stop checking your phone. A moment when you look at the sky without needing to describe it. A moment when you suddenly realize, I am here. That can be enough. But now let's return to the question that started all of this. You think you're the observer. But something is still watching you. What could that mean? It does not necessarily mean there is another person somewhere behind you. It does not mean you should become afraid. And it does not mean you need to imagine a supernatural being following you. The deeper mystery is much closer. It may be that what feels like something watching you is the strange experience of awareness becoming aware of itself. The watcher, noticing the watching. The observer, noticing the observer. The mind, noticing that it is being observed. And when that happens, the usual boundary between me and my experience can become very thin. You may suddenly notice, I am not only having an experience. I am aware that I am having an experience. That second layer changes the entire picture. Because now you are not completely lost inside the movie. You are aware that you are watching the movie. And once you see that, you can begin to question the role you've been playing in your own life. How many decisions were made from fear? How many choices came from the need to be accepted? How many dreams were actually yours? How many were inherited from other people's expectations? How often did you say, I want this, when what you really meant was, I want people to see me as successful? These questions can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes discomfort is the sound of an old identity losing its grip. And when that identity begins to loosen, you may feel strangely empty. Don't panic. That emptiness may simply be space. Space where a new way of seeing yourself can emerge. You don't have to rush to fill it. Stay there. Breathe. Observe. Let the question remain alive. Because something remarkable happens when you stop demanding immediate answers. You become more comfortable with not knowing. And in that space, you begin to hear something quieter than thought. Not a voice. Not a command. Not a prediction. Just presence. I am. And maybe that is why you were drawn to this message at this exact moment. Not because you were chosen above everyone else. Not because some invisible force has decided your future. But because you finally became curious enough to look at something you normally take for granted. Your own awareness. And once you begin looking, you cannot completely unsee it. You can return to distraction. You can return to old habits. You can become lost in thought again. But somewhere inside you, you now know there is a difference between being lost in an experience and watching the experience. That knowledge becomes the beginning of a new kind of freedom. But we're not finished. Because if awareness can watch your thoughts, and awareness can watch your identity, then we still have to ask one final question. What happens when you stop trying to be the observer at all? What happens when even the idea of I am watching disappears? And what remains? When there is no watcher left to point at. When the mind searches for the one who is watching, it discovers that the deepest mystery was never outside. It was the watcher itself. That is the threshold we are approaching now. And now, let everything you think you know about yourself become quiet for a moment. You don't need to stop thinking. You don't need to force silence. Just notice what happens when you stop chasing every thought. A thought appears. You see it. Another thought appears. You see that too. A feeling rises. You notice it. A memory comes back. You notice that. But what if you stop saying, "I am watching"? What if even that sentence becomes unnecessary? Because the moment you say, "I am the observer," you have created another identity, another role, another image of yourself. And that image can also be observed. So let it go. You don't have to become the observer. You don't have to become more spiritual. You don't have to become someone special. You simply remain present. I am. Nothing added. Nothing removed. Just I am. Stay there. For a few seconds, don't complete the sentence. Don't say, "I am successful." Don't say, "I am powerful." Don't say, "I am broken." Don't say, "I am lost." Just I am. Notice how different that feels. There is no story attached to it. No past. No future. No performance. And this is where something beautiful can happen. You begin to realize that many of the things you call yourself are actually descriptions of yourself. Your name is a description. Your job is a description. Your history is a description. Your personality is a description. Even your fears are descriptions of experiences you have had. But the simple fact that you are here comes before all of them. Before the story, there is presence. Before the label, there is awareness. Before the explanation, there is being. And maybe this is why you sometimes feel tired from trying so hard to become someone. You keep adding more success, more approval, more knowledge, more achievements, more proof, more certainty. But the I am state moves in the opposite direction. It asks, what can you stop carrying? What identity can you loosen? What old story can you stop repeating? What expectation can you release? What version of yourself no longer needs to be defended? This doesn't mean you stop having goals. You can still build. You can still work. You can still dream. You can still love. You can still want a better life. But you no longer have to believe that your worth begins after you achieve those things. You can act from awareness instead of constantly acting to prove your existence. And this changes something very important. Your future stops feeling like a place where you will finally become enough. Instead, the future becomes a place where what you already are can express itself. That's a completely different way of living. Imagine walking through a desert. For miles, there is nothing but sand. You are tired. You begin wondering if you took the wrong path. You keep walking because you have no other choice. Then, in the distance, you see a light. At first, you don't trust it. Maybe it's a reflection. Maybe it's your tired mind creating something that isn't there. So you keep walking. The light gets closer, and eventually you discover something unexpected. The light wasn't the destination. It was showing you the direction. That's what awareness can become in your life. Not a magical escape from every problem, but a light showing you what is happening inside you. You see the fear before fear controls your decision. You see the anger before it becomes an action. You see the old pattern before you repeat it. You see the desire for approval before you sacrifice yourself for it. And because you see it, you have a choice. That choice is powerful. But here's something even deeper. Sometimes you will notice the same old pattern returning. Don't think you've failed. Awareness is not about never having another negative thought. It is about noticing the thought sooner. Maybe once you spend an entire day lost in it. Then 1 hour. Then 10 minutes. Then 30 seconds. Then suddenly, you catch it as it begins. That is progress. You are not trying to become a machine that never feels pain. You are becoming someone who can experience pain without completely losing yourself inside it. You can feel sadness without becoming sadness. You can experience fear without becoming fear. You can experience uncertainty without believing uncertainty is your identity. You can experience failure without deciding that you are a failure. There is space between what happens. and what you decide it means. That space is where awareness becomes practical. And now, think about the people who have changed your life. Some stayed. Some left. Some disappointed you. Some helped you. Some relationships ended even though you thought they would last forever. Maybe you spent months asking, why did this happen to me? But from awareness, another question becomes possible. What is this experience showing me? Not every painful event has some predetermined cosmic reason. Sometimes life simply hurts. But even pain can become something you observe. And when you observe it, you can learn from it without letting it become your entire identity. The closed door becomes information. The rejection becomes information. The ending becomes information. The mistake becomes information. You are still here. You are still aware. You are still capable of choosing what happens next. And that is the part your old identity may have forgotten. You are not required to remain the person who reacted yesterday. You can notice. You can pause. You can choose. You can begin again. That is not weakness. That is consciousness in action. And perhaps this is the real meaning behind the strange feeling that something is still watching you. It isn't necessarily something outside you. It may be the deepest part of your awareness reminding you. You are here, even when you feel lost. You are here, even when your plans collapse. You are here, even when an old identity falls apart. You are here, even when you don't know what happens next. You are here. I am. Those two words can become an anchor. Not because they magically control reality, but because they bring you back to the one thing happening right now. You exist. You are aware. You are present. And from that place, you can choose your next step. But there is still one mystery left. Because once you understand that the observer can observe thoughts, and that awareness can notice the observer, you have to ask something even more uncomfortable. If you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your memories, not even the image you have created of yourself, then what exactly are you? And if you finally stop searching for an answer, what happens to the question? Stay with that. Because the next realization may completely change the way you understand the words. I am. You don't need to become a new person. You need to stop confusing every passing experience with who you are. And once that distinction becomes clear, the final door begins to open. The final door does not open by force. It opens when you stop trying to push it. For so long, you have been searching for an answer to the question, who am I? You may have answered it with your name, your age, your family, your work, your memories, your dreams, your pain, your achievements. But every answer describes something about you. It does not completely explain the one who is aware of all those descriptions. So perhaps the deeper question is not, who am I? Perhaps it is, what remains when I stop trying to define myself? Stay with that question. Don't rush. Let the mind become quiet enough to notice what happens. You don't disappear. You are still here. The room doesn't disappear. Your body doesn't disappear. Your breathing continues. Thoughts may still come and go, but something becomes less important. The need to explain. And for a moment, there is only presence. I am. Not, I am this. Not, I am that. Just, I am. This is not an escape from reality. It is a return to the experience that is already happening. You are here. You are aware. And you don't have to manufacture that fact. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to become worthy of it. It was here before your latest success. And it remains here after your latest mistake. This is why your identity can change without destroying your existence. You can lose a job and still be here. A relationship can end and still be here. A dream can collapse and still be here. A chapter of your life can close and still the story changes. The awareness of the story remains. And once you understand that distinction, something inside you becomes harder to shake. Not because you become emotionless, but because you stop asking every emotion to tell you who you are. Fear can speak without becoming your identity. Sadness can speak without becoming your identity. Excitement can speak without becoming your identity. Even doubt can speak without becoming your identity. You listen. You notice. You choose. And that is where the I am state becomes something you can carry into ordinary life. Not only during meditation, not only when everything feels peaceful, but when someone upsets you, when plans fail, when you are waiting for an answer, when you are alone at night, when your mind starts creating 100 possible futures, you pause and remember, I am. Then you notice the thought, you notice the emotion, you notice the reaction, and you don't have to immediately obey it. That small pause can change a life. Because your old patterns depend on speed. They need you to react before you become aware. They need the message to trigger anger, the memory to trigger sadness, the uncertainty to trigger fear. Before you have time to see what is happening, awareness interrupts that chain. Something happens. You notice. You breathe. You choose. And suddenly, you are no longer living entirely from old programming. You are responding from the present. But there is one more thing you need to understand. The I am state is not a permanent feeling of peace. You may still have difficult days. You may still become distracted. You may still lose yourself in thought. You may still react sometimes. That does not mean you lost awareness forever. The sky doesn't disappear because clouds cover it. The sky was there before the cloud, and it remains there after the cloud moves away. Your thoughts are like clouds. Your emotions are like weather. Awareness is the open space in which they appear. And once you recognize that, you stop fighting every cloud. You stop demanding that the weather always be perfect. You learn to remain present while life moves. Now, look at your own life. Think about something you have been trying to control. Maybe it's your future. Maybe it's another person's opinion. Maybe it's something that happened in the past. Maybe it's the fear that you are running out of time. Notice what happens when you stop fighting the thought for just a moment. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to force an answer. Just observe. What is happening inside me right now? That question brings you back. And then, I am aware. Not, I must fix everything. Not, I must know everything. Just, I am aware. That is enough for this moment. And perhaps the greatest surprise is that the thing you were searching for was never hidden behind some mysterious gate. It was present in every moment you experienced. When you laughed, it was there. When you cried, it was there. When you were afraid, it was there. When you fell in love, it was there. When you thought you had lost yourself, it was still there. Something remained. Watching, knowing, present. And maybe that is the strange feeling you could never explain. Something was still watching you, because awareness never stopped being present. But don't turn that mystery into fear. Let it become an invitation to stop running from your own experience, to stop constantly asking the world to tell you who you are, to stop giving every passing thought the authority to define you. You can listen to your mind without becoming your mind. You can feel your emotions without becoming your emotions. You can remember your past without living inside it. You can imagine your future without abandoning the present. And through all of it, you can return to those two simple words. I am. Take one more slow breath. Feel yourself sitting where you are. Notice the space around you. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. And then, notice that you are aware of all of it. No performance. No explanation. No need to prove anything. Just presence. Just awareness. Just, I am. The deepest version of you is not the story that changes every day. It is the awareness that remains while the story changes. And now you may understand why the title asked such a strange question. You thought you were the observer, but something was still watching. And perhaps the final realization is this. You were never being watched by something you needed to fear. You were becoming aware of the awareness that had been with you all along. But don't close the door yet, because there is one final practice that can take this from an idea in your mind into something you can actually experience for yourself. And that practice begins with one simple sentence. I am here.